and how brain interpret the things from the environment for the sake of storage for the future reference. Hopefully the purpose of lecture is clear. Now let's jump to the directly the topic. So perception is simply the process of making sense of the stimuli in our environment. Without this perceptual ability, everything is nonsense. Everything is like we don't know about in which world we are living. We have no idea about the environment. We have no idea about the humans. Just imagine for just 1 minute, if let's say uh, you get trapped in some jungle in a new environment which you haven't visited before. So what will happen? Everything would be new. Let's say if someone make you unconscious and put you in a spaceship, and then you guys you landed on some exoplanet or some different planet. So when you will awake, how the world will be? Obviously it would be terrifying. Obviously it would be different. Obviously the word it will take a while to understand that what happened with us. So in the same way, perception is that our cognitive ability that makes us understandable regarding our environment, that what is going on, what is this thing, and how it's a process of selecting, organizing, and then interpreting the raw sensory data. Why it's labeled as the raw sensory data? Raw means the data which haven't labeled yet, or which is different, or which is linked even to the previous data. So, what is this perception thing? It's a process of selection from the environment, that on which stimulus you have to put focus, on which things you have to you have to understand, which things are important, which things should be ignored, etc. And then organizing it into something meaningful, and then interpreting for the sake of storage in something which your brain can understand, into something which your brain can took for the sake of making the schemas. So hopefully the definition is clear, right? So in simple words, it's a process of making sense of our environment. It's a process of making sense of our external environment. And in detail, what we do while doing the perception or the perceptual process, that we are selecting from the environment based. Let's see, I will explain that how we select, how we organize, how we interpret. But for the sake of definition, we are going to select, we are going to organize into something meaningful, and then we are interpreting that raw data. So, what it is? Did you guys identify this figure? Other than these labels, the DNA 88, if someone labeled it something else, then just write it down in the comment box. Or otherwise, we will move to the next slide. Okay, so let's see. This is the one figure which is lying on the floor, and let's assume these are the seven different individuals who are perceiving differently this figure. One say it is 8, like the mathematical 8. One say it's a 8 which is written in the word form. One say no, it's an infinity sign, it's a wave, it's a puzzle. One say that no, it's a DNA basically. So let's see how these differences emerge in the perceiving the different things. Now, there is a keen need to differentiate the perceptual ability from our sensation ability. Sensation is merely what comes directly to your sensory systems, like what external stimuli come in the eyes, what auditory signal you perceive by your ears, what touch signals you perceive via the skin, etc. And sensation is the process of converting these external stimuli into the nerve cells. You remember the process of that action potential, that neuron. So we label this process as a sensation, not the perception. Let me clear. Okay, I will explain in the next slide what is the difference between these two abilities. So we will put the label as the sensation when there is merely the conversion of external stimuli, environmental data, environmental stimuli into the neuronal signal via the sensory organs. Let's see what are the differences between these two. Sensation is a process through which our senses pick up the visual, auditory, and other sensory stimuli and then transmit them to the brain. These sensory information has been registered in your brain and has not been interpreted. All this is very important. This is a fundamental difference. That your brain accepts those information, but your brain yet not put a label on that information. That from which category this will belong, from which category in future your brain will place this information, and this information. What is the meaning of that information in simple words? Whereas contrary to this sensation thing, perception is a process by which the sensory information is actively organized, actively interpreted by your brain. Got it? So what's the difference between the two? When the brain just merely receives the data and just put it into somewhere, but no label has been attached yet, then we will label it as the sensation process. But when the brain actively put a label on it, okay, this information belongs to the stationery class, this information belongs to the dental materials class, this information belongs to the this one, then we will label it as the perception. Got it? So sensation is the first step in the perception, right? These are not the synonyms, these are not the parallel things. Now, this picture will more elaborately clear this message that what is perception and what is sensation. These words, the touch, the sight, and this the sorry. Let me move this bar. Okay, this sound, these words depicts the sensation, not the perception. But the words that sound is very loud, sound is very quiet, sound is of particular pitch. These words depicts the perceptual process. In the same way, sight merely denotes that you're seeing something, that will merely denotes that you're sensing something, you're sensing an image. But how far it is, how close it is, from which image it relates, where this image yields which type of information, all these labels comes under the heading of the perception. Same applies to the touch and same applies to the all of our basic senses. As I said earlier, that the perception is not limited to the visual thing, it applies to the all senses equally. Now, let's see how this process works and how we perceive the different things. So, as I said earlier, the first step would be the sensation. Without sensing a stimulus, without, if the stimulus doesn't touch your five sensory organs, then the perceptual process cannot be initiated, right? So for the perception thing to work successfully, first we have to sense the data via our five senses, that it should yield the action potential at the five sensory organs. Then the second step is the organization of data. Organization of data is according to the objective characteristics and according to the subjective characteristics. I will explain later on in this presentation. I mean that you will sense the data, then you will organize according to the characteristic of data or according to the some backward processes which are going on in your own mind, right? Right for the moment, just accept it as it is. We are seeing in the later on slides that how this whole thing works, this organization thing. Then the next step is the translation of that data. Word deducing a meaningful message from that you have seen after seeing a in the sky, you will at night time you will label it as the star. So this involves a translation of the data, means you put the data into some organizable thing then you will label it that this data is meaningful in this way. I deduce this meaning from this message. Got it? So for the perceptual process to occur, first thing is the sensation, then is the channelization or the organization of data into something meaningful, and then deducing a meaningful word, deducing a meaningful message from that data. Okay. Now, let's see what are the factors that are affecting your this perception thing, or what are those factors that are affecting this organization and this translation process, right? And so, in the next slide, we're going to cover the factors which are related with this organization thing and with this translation thing. So, we divided these factors into the three categories. One are the objective factors, those factors that are related to the stimuli, those factors that belongs to the external stimuli from the environment. That is the size of stimulus, the color of stimulus, the mass of stimulus, the volume of stimulus. For example, for understanding this thing in a better way, how you recognize all of your fellows in just one side, or how you recognize that which of your fellows right now talking, by just merely listening to his voice, because his voice has some unique characteristics like the pitch, like the loudness, like the style, like the accent, etc. So these are the objective factors which are linked with the object or with the external stimuli. Then another important factor which helps, which is very crucial, I must say, in organizing and then translating the data from the environment. These factors are known as a subjective factors, those variables that are linked with your own mind. I mean to say that what are your motivations, what are your interests, in which context you are thinking right now, in which context you are receiving the information. These are very important in giving the meaning to the external data. And then the next are the social factors, which are obviously indirectly comes under the heading of subjective factors, as the values, the context, these are linked with the subject, not the object. Hopefully it's clear. So let's study them one by one. Now see, what are the variables in our equation? As uh, the factors that are linked with the object, these cannot be changed, as we have no control over the natural processes or over the natural things. The factors which are linked, however, with the subject and with the social, these are changing. These are these factors vary from the person to person. Now, among the subjective factors, two factors are very important. One are the motives or the needs, and another one are the attention and the perception. Motives or needs, as we studied in the previous lecture, let's give you a quick overview. You guys have studied about the intrinsic motivation, about the extrinsic motivation, about that Maslow triangle. So we perceive what we need. That's a basic principle which we have learned, which our mind, our brain have learned over the period of evolution, right? Our brain are not trying to waste any energies. Our brain is not wasting any energy in the useless thing, in the meaningless thing, right? This is the same principle which you have studied in the memory lecture. Like our brain only encode those information that are personally meaningful. You have studied the same principle in the motivation, that our brain only motivate according to one need, according to one desire at one time, which the Maslow have presented in a triangular form, right? So in the same way, this is the same principle, this is the same evolutionary principle. If I level in a sophisticated words, that that applies to the motivation thing, right? So motivation is also very dependent upon your need state, upon your motivation state. For example, if you're thirsty, then it's impossible that you will learn something new. Obviously you need water. Okay. In the same way, let's say if you need power in an environment, if you need a leadership in an environment, then it's impossible that you will put efforts in controlling the conflict. You will put efforts in understanding the other party. What is your motivation? That I need power. So why you would step back? right? So we perceive things according to our state of mind. That's very important. Let's say maybe in future a furious patient comes towards you, and there would be a times when you will very calm, when you would be very relaxed, even after listening to the lot of hard words, after listening a lot of bad words. But there's some time that even if the patient just merely repeats that, doctor, how I will take this drug, and it will become furious. Why this difference occurs? The patient is the same, response may be the same, but the difference lies in your own motivation, in your own need. Got my point? So in the same way, attention plays a very important role while perceiving the data, perceiving the stimulus from the environment. If you put attention towards the stimulate, then you will only get it perceived. If you're just merely sitting somewhere, or if you're merely just listening to somewhere and you are not putting attention to anything, then it's impossible to perceive, right? So for understanding, for the sake of understanding of this lecture or any other lecture, it's very important that you put attention by heart on it, that what is being said, what is being viewed, etc. Got it? So what I can deduce from this slide, that our perception is highly dependent upon our motivation needs and our attention needs. Obviously if there is motivation, then ultimately the attention would come. Now, let's see what are the basic perceptual abilities, what are the basic perceptual things which are common to every human being. What are the basic skills that we have acquired during our evolution, and these are the few phenomena which occur in our mind, which occur in our brain, and this is universal. Always remember, these are not linked to a particular thing. This is how our brain perceives, in short, right? Read the first line, which is very important. We perceive objects in different manners as compared to their position, as compared to their size, as compared to their the background, right? So the basic perceptual abilities, the basic perceptual competencies include form, size, depth perception, and the perception of movement. Let's see one by one then. Form perception, also the gestalt perception. Gestalt by means the image. So the perception linked to the image. It means that our brain perceive the things as a whole. We are not considering the background. We are just picking the things against the background. I will explain in the coming slides how. So first put your focus on the theory. Figures and grounds are the basic organizational themes for the perceptions. One point. Second point is that figure is perceived as distinct from the background. Let's say, uh, let's say there is a laptop which is placed on a desk. So what your brain would see at first glance, the laptop, not the desk. Let's say if I will conduct an experiment, and I will send you in some strange room, and I would say that, okay, now go to that particular room and pick the things, made a list of things which you have seen in the first 5 minutes, in the first 25 seconds, or the first 1 minute. Now you will note that your brain only notices the things against the background, not the background. You will not notice the wall, but you will notice the wall clock. Got my point? So this is our first perceptual ability, that our brain perceives the things, not the background. Background become blur according to our mind, according to our brain, and the things which are placed against that background, that would be highlighted. For example, on a wall, you will not notice the color of the wall, but you will notice the flex that is being attached on the wall, right? On a door, you will not notice the color of the door, but you will notice the things which are attached against that door. Got it? So let me explain how. Now focus on this figure. Our brain is not noticing the background, but we are seeing the this button triangles and these half button circles, like the Pokemons. Is it, or isn't it? Right? By considering these apparent things, our brain have drawn an image that the two triangles are lying against each other in the opposite directions, and they are bitten by these objects, etc. Isn't it? So our brain doesn't consider the background. Instead, our brain considers the things which are attached against that background. Now, in the future, inshallah, next year, you guys will study this picture. Now, I'm making it relevant with that. What you see in this picture, if anyone can type, then it would be very easy for me to interpret it. Please quickly type in the background what you are seeing in this radiograph. Quickly, any word, any caption. Obviously, the teeth. Obviously, but what else beside the teeth? Yeah, it's an X-ray. And what's on the X-ray? Okay, let me make it more. No, it's not root canal. Uh, Obviously, canals are visible. Uh, did anyone notice this? Where my cursor is blinking, this thing, this radiolucency and the triangle form. Yes, this is not the space. This is the radiolucency. Okay, so this is the image of the little periodontal cyst. You will study in the oral pathology in the next year. But the point is that our brain has linked this triangular shape. Those who discovered the little periodontal cyst on the radiograph, they linked it with some teardrop thing. If you just imagine in a three dimension this radiolucency on which I am putting my mouse cursor, so this triangular thing, they labeled it as in literature as the tear drop, right? If you put a dropper and you put a drop out of it, then it will come in this form. So uh, those oral pathologists, they have linked the teardrop with this thing. Okay, if there is a periodontal cyst, then between the roots a teardrop like an object will be observed, can be observed. Then we'll label it as, okay, fine, it's a little periodontal cyst. So now come to the point towards the previous slide. What I said, what is the form perception? That our brain picks up the things against the background. Our brain relates the things against the background. We label it as something which we have already seen, right? Based upon its shape, based upon its outer boundary. Now, the second competency is the patterns and the constancies, as this one. The second number, the size perception, which comes under, it is also written in your book as a size perception. So, let me tell what it is. So, our brain puts focus on the feature of the physical object, like what is the boundary line, what is the how many angles are there in a shape, how many turns are there in a shape, and even if the object becomes smaller or if the object becomes larger, if that angles, if that thing can are sensible, then our brain will label the same tag which you have originally coded for that particular object. Let me make it simple. A ball pen is always a ball pen until unless it has its own ink reservoir, it has its own working end like the snip, and it is contained in a vessel. It will become the ink pen the moment you add an ink reservoir on it, isn't it? So what is the purpose of giving you this example? That our brain is not interested with the physical objects, but our brain is interested with the patterns and the constancies. That while interpreting an object, while making a schema, while making a memory, our brain put focus on the physical detail of an object. That how many corners are there, how many turns are there, what is the color of that particular thing, etc. and etc. Got it? Like in the previous, what was the previous competency? The form perception. That our brain will put focus on the things against the background, not on the background, right? So what is the second competency? the pattern and the constancy, that our brain would put focus on the detailed physical detail of an object, right? You have studied the histopathology slides, and when you have learned about it, so in the exam when the slide that came, you identified it according to the marking which you have put in your mind, like the slide of the liver. It is broken on one side, like the slide of from the nervous system, it contains a black dot in the center. So these and these things, got it? So what is the mean of the second competency? That our brain is not interested on the thing as a whole. Finally speaking, our brain is more interested regarding the finer physical, regarding the final materialistic detail of an object, right? So we perceive objects in our environment as having the features such as the pattern, the constancy, the depth, the movement, etc. Clear? Now, under this heading, the two further things can come. One is the pattern perception, and other one is the size perception. So let's jump to the first one, pattern perception. As I depicted earlier, that our brain is interested more in the physical detail of an object, right? So if the object becomes short, if the object become distant, if the object become whatever, if you put it in the upward direction, if you put it at the 45 degree, 75 degree, 30 degree, whatever, it would be the same object until unless those pinpoint patterns are visible, those pinpoint patterns are understandable, those pinpoint patterns are sensible, right? The moment those patterns gone, then you will label it as something else. Got my point or not? Okay. So how you will define this thing? What is the pattern perception, or what is the pattern constancy, or what is the this basic thing? It is the ability to discriminate among different shapes and figures, right? Let's see how. Then is the that this pattern will become constant. How constant? As I give you the earlier example, that doesn't matter that how this particular thing changes its images on your retina, how this particular thing become the changeable, but until unless the basic details are clear, until unless the basic things are clear, it would be the same object. Your brain would recognize it as the same object. For example, look at this picture. Now quickly type what you have seen in the picture A and the B. B is on my right and the A is on my left. Quickly. You have studied these both these things in your first year, which is not from the clinical dentistry. Quickly type it. What you will label this black teeth, and what you will put which label will you put on this yellow teeth, which is on the left side? Okay, let's check. Yeah, it's a caries. It's a caries on the black one. Good enough. Good enough. Now you see how your brain retain the pattern of the caries. That caries should be a pitted thing. It should be a blackish thing, etc. But on the left side, it's an erosion. How the brain will classify these two things? That the erosion is something which is not pitted. Erosion is something which is like the dissolution of an enamel, which is like yeah, it looks like the plaque, because plaque is also yellow. That's why you perceive it as a plaque. Now you got the difference. What I mean when I told you about the pattern constancy, that until unless the pattern of a thing remains the same, doesn't matter in which area, in which environment you are perceiving a thing, the thing would be the same. Got it? So let's jump to the quickly to the next slide. This is a long lecture. While the size constancy means as long as the details are same, as long as the physical detail like the angle, like the shape is same, doesn't matter if the object becomes smaller or if the object become larger, you will label it as the same object. For example, if an aeroplane, uh, you're on a runway, aeroplane would seem to be larger because it's obviously the distance is smaller, right? So you will label it as an aeroplane on runway. Whereas if you see the aeroplane in the skies, a smaller aeroplane narrowly visible, but until unless the details are visible, like what I mean by detail, the wings, the tail, and that particular vessel structure, which are the basic characteristics of an aeroplane, you will label it as the aeroplane in the sky. Got it? So the size of a thing doesn't matter, but the particular details of a thing, yes, that matters to our brain. Let's see how. Now, uh, is this an incisor or this is a molar? Obviously this is a molar. Doesn't matter if if I put the right molar in a glass vessel. Doesn't matter if I put the red color in it, and on the left side the molar I hang it on some pin as a model, but it would be a molar for me. Is it or not? Obviously yes. So you see, if the size of the things become change, then our brain will label it as the same thing until unless the geometry is same, in short words. Hopefully. So now the three competencies are clear. One is a form perception, that our brain is more interested regarding the things, not the background. Second one are the pattern constancy, that is, until unless the pattern is same, the thing would be perceived as the same. Then the next competency was the size constancy. What is mean by the size constancy? That is, that doesn't matter what is the size of a particular object, as long as the object contains the same geometrical information, then we will label it as the of similar size, of similar object. Now the next competency is about the shape constancy. Shape constancy means whatever the size, whatever the viewing angle of an object, it's again the repetition of the same old principle which you have studied in the previous slides. As long as the geometrical details are same, then our brain will perceive the object as the same. now now quickly type it if you can recognize this thing. If you can recognize this thing, what it is, then write it down in the chat box. Now, okay. Yes, the molar. Which molar? Maxillary or mandibular? No, no, it's not the premolar. First molar, yes. Maxillary or mandibular? No. How mandibular? Yes, it's obviously maxillary. Why maxillary? Yes, because of oblique ridge and because of this cusp. The palatal cusp, yes, is always larger. Whereas in the mandibular molar, there are the five cusps, usually three on the, and it has a distinct shape as compared to this one, isn't it? So how our brain records this thing? Because of these particular features, because of these cusps, because of this ridges, yes, because of the particular pattern regarding this molars. So now you see the importance of perceptual constancy, size constancy, and the form constancy. Hopefully this is clear. Now, another important perceptual ability, which is very indeed important, is the depth perception. That humans, nature give the ability to humans that we can perceive the depth of a thing, that how deep it is, how far it is from the surface, right? So this is another our optical perceptual ability. And let me tell you one thing, this depth perception is also involved in the auditory thing. In the auditory thing, our brain assumes it that how far from this place this voice is coming, and from which direction, and from approximately what is the distance of this voice. So depth applies both to the auditory as well as the visual thing. Okay, but in the literature, when you will search the internet, it is obviously described in the visual terms, because it's easy to describe, easy to give the put the examples. So Now you have, what is this depth perception? Is the ability to see the world in the three dimensions and to perceive the distance. In simple words, our brain can imagine the distance. Our brain can imagine that how far this image is coming and how far this voice is coming. Now, the second thing which you need to learn, what are the cues? I didn't highlighted it, but put focus on it. Cues or the optical cues is the depth perception of the eye while viewing an object at a distance. That uh, our eye will took the details of an object, we label it as the cues or the clues. Now, how our brain perceives the depth perception, there are three phenomena which are involved in it, or two phenomena basically. One are the monocular cues, one are the binocular cues. For the moment, forget about this retinal disparity thing. First put focus on these two words. Monocular, as the name depicts, arising from the one eye. Monocular, right? So those cues, those ideas, those guess points which brain perceives via the one eye, like the size of an object, like the detail of an object, like the depth of an object, etc. But but nature gives us two eyes. This is not meaningless. This is not the case that in the moment, if we lost one eye, then we have a spare eye. This is not the case. Nature put the two eyes on your head because there is a reason. Now, just do a simple experiment. Close your one eye and start viewing this lecture. Now, after 1 minute or after 30 seconds, close another eye and again start viewing from your left eye. Let's say you will see there is a difference in both the images. So nature put the two eyes to capture the different details from the two different angles, so that your brain can then later on combine these two angles. Your brain can later on can combine these two different details and emerge and form a new image. Got my point? For the sake of this purpose, nature has given us the retinal disparity. What is mean by retinal disparity? That our retina is in the form of a sphere. It's not a parallel surface, or it's not a balanced surface, right? So on this sphere, we perceive the things, we take the things in a different angles. I will explain in the coming slide that how this retinal disparity is important. But for the right now, what is the competency? The perceptual competency. It is the depth perception. What it mean? It mean that our brain can understand the depth, that how deep this thing is, how deep this image is. How? By combining the cues from the one eye, monocular cues, and by giving and getting the guess via the two eyes, then combining the image from the two eyes, known as the binocular cues. And on the top of it, eye retina, it's not flat, it's like a curve, so brain get the images in an angular form. Got it? Now let's jump to the next slides. So this is an example of the monocular cues. When you are standing on the top of the stairs, you will get the idea that how deep are the stairs, how deep is this well, how deep is the that on which floor you are standing, how deep is the ground from this particular floor. So these type of guesses, they are usually driven by the monocular cues from the use of the one eye, right? Now, in the future, you will have to put focus on such images when you will perform the root canal, when you will break the instrument in the root canal for the sake of identifying that you have broke the instrument in the middle third and the apical third. You will all of you will close your one eye. You will took the radiograph in your hand and you will put focus on the radiograph, right? So you must observe with the objects, that when you're seeing the things from the one eye, you will got the more finer details of that particular thing. Just practice it. Just practice it by closing your one eye and put focus more on any object. You will see the more in a more focused way, in a more oriented way. Now, using the same principles, the scientists, they have developed uh, this CT scan thing and this cone beam computerized tomography thing, CBCT thing. You will do in the future when you will trying to put the implant in the patients. So what they have done, they are capturing the 300 images or the 280 images of the same object in the different dimensions. Then a computer program joins all those images and form a three-dimensional image, which you can see in this in the lower left corner of your screen. This yellow color mandible and the maxilla. What they did, they took the picture of all these small fragments, then they combined it in a three-dimensional form. In the same way, your brain captures the images from the both eyes, the slightly different images as the both eye angle, both cameras which nature put on your forehead, they are lying, they are attached at the different angles. Then the brain, like the computer program, do combine these images. Then in the similar way, your brain combine these images in your brain and generates a three-dimensional thing, right? So what is our next ability is the perception of movement. In simple words, the when the two objects are lying very close to each other, then it would be perceived our brain as they are moving. There are two type of cues further involved in it. It's not important to remember the detail. One is the real movement and one is the apparent movement. Apparent movement is of special interest. You have observed, all of you have observed it while watching the movie, how the movie is created in the computer or in the or how they are generating the movie thing is in the backward in the 90s. they are just they are just taking the pictures of the different things, then they're combining those pictures at a specific level known as the frame rate of a movie or a frame rate of a video. Remembered it? You must search on the internet regarding this thing, that how they generate the movies, how they generate the cartoons in the 1990s or backward, when the computer invention or this graphical things were not invented. So when these closely lying images, they passes at a rapid movement, then our brain perceive it as that the image is moving. So in simple words, what is this ability? Perception of movement. When the two objects that are lying very close to each other in the space, and if they change the position or if they not change the position, but our brain will perceive it as the moving. Although those objects are lying stationary, but our brain will perceive it as a moving objects. Like the billboards, those lights who are attached over some signboard, they are rapidly switching on and off. So it will give you a perception that these lights are moving around the side of that particular board. This is the illusion. Now put it focus on this image is stationary, but just for the few seconds, put your concentration on the middle of the screen. What do you see? Quickly write down in the chat box what you observe from these images. Quickly, we don't have time. Circles, are they moving? Yes, it's an optical illusion. Yes, slightly moving. So how your brain perceives these circles moving? Because the yellow, white, black, and the blue dots, they're lying so close to each other. So when you put focus on it, it looks like they are moving, but actually they are not moving. Okay. Now, so far what we have covered, what is the perception? We have covered how it works. We have covered the four basic perceptual abilities, the constancies, depth, and the perception of the movement. Now let's come toward quickly about the pathologies of perception. There are three pathologies involved so far concerning you people. Although this perception topic is so vast that even the abilities needs 2 or 3 lectures, but at the undergrad moment, at the undergrad level, there is no need to go into such detail. So for you people, there are three words which are very important. One is illusion, one is a delusion, and the third one is a hallucination. Just focus on it. Just I will explain in just one line. For the illusion and delusion to happen, or to label someone that is he is in the illusion or he is in the delusion, the stimulus must be present. External environment stimulus must be present. If an object observes, perceives that stimulus as the misperceive, or as he labels it as which the others are not labeling it in that way, then we will put the label on that particular subject as he is illusion. He is in illusion. If that subject who is in illusion, he firmly believes on it, then we will label it as the delusion. What is delusion? False, firm belief. I will explain. Now, what is illusion? Stimulus is there, but a particular person is perceiving it wrongly. For example, the syrup. When you see the water on the road in the summers, the syrup. This is illusion. As I have mentioned in the previous slide, the moving circles. These are the illusion. Stimulus is there. We perceive it as wrong that these circles are moving. This is illusion. Now, we knew that it is a perceptual ability and it is illusion. We are not in the delusion. But let's say, for example, some of your patient or someone else firmly believes on it. Start calling with you. He will believe in such a firm way that he is not agree to agree with you that okay, no, it's impossible. This is a delusion. So how we will define the delusion? False firm belief. Whereas this third thing, the hallucination, is entirely different. For hallucination to occur, there must be no external stimulus should be present. No external stimulus is present, but that particular person is perceiving it. Let me see it in quickly. What is illusion? The misrepresentation of a real stimulus. What is hallucination? The perceptions without any stimulus. Okay, now focus on this picture. First focus on the middle one. Illusions are the real stimulus are there, but they are the misinterpreted, right? Like you see in this picture, this guy, he is just pointing his thumb, but the white guy perceive it as the that he is a killer. Now put your focus on the bottom picture, the delusion. False fixed beliefs, firmly fixed belief, right? Like this lady who is vowing in this mirror that I am the Cleopatra. Now it jumps to the top of the picture, the hallucination. There is no physical stimulus should be present, but the subject, the individual, he is perceiving it as that I am listening to the voices. I'm seeing the objects in the air. These objects are talking with me. These objects are lying besides me, etc. Right? So now another important point which you should remember regarding the hallucination is that it's a hallmark of the psychotic symptoms. Psychotic patients like the schizophrenia, etc. Psychotics are those which don't have the connection with the reality, right? Okay. Now, for example, someday in your surgery theater, you might be focusing on you might be seeing a suture lying there, and you will label it as a snake is there if it's a black sheep. Now, just quickly, what are the extrasensory perception? Extrasensory perception is a real phenomena, although it's not scientifically proved, but it is there. The research has been going on there. Research is still there till since the 1930s, but it's not scientifically proven. And it involves these few things: telepathy, telekinesis, clairvoyance, and the precognition. Let's quickly see it as we have the short time. Telepathy is simply the mind over the mind. You can read someone's mind, you can change the perception of the someone, you can change the ideology of someone. It's extrasensory perception of another person's thoughts, or in other words, the ability to read the someone else's mind. Whereas telekinesis is that mind over the matter. It's the ability that with your mind power you can bend the knife, you can call the light bulb that it should come towards you, you can call the physical objects, something like this. So this is the difference. Telepathy is that the mind over mind. You can alter the thought, you can alter the emotions of someone. Whereas in the telekinesis, you are putting focus on the inanimate objects, in the physical objects, and you're altering its properties. Similar another this extrasensory perception phenomena is the clairvoyance. Clairvoyance is that you perceive the things despite of the distance, right? Like your mother can predict that there is something going wrong with my child, and despite she is sitting the 1,000 miles away from his child. So this phenomena is known as the clairvoyance. Another thing, another the sub part of the clairvoyance is the precognition. Basically, the clairvoyance has the two components. One is the post cognition, and one is the precognition. For the sake of simplicity, just take it as post cognition is that perceiving of the events from the past, like some saint saying you that this thing happens in the past with you. He's reading your past, whereas the precognition is that the someone is telling you about your future events, right? Something related to the prophetic things, something related to the dreams, etc., like this way. Got it? But there is no scientific evidence for this extrasensory perception. Research is still going on. They have claimed it that it is another branch of the psychology, the parapsychology, but yet they didn't prove it. They failed to report it, right? So, what is the take home message from the today's lecture is that do not rely on your own perception, as your own perception is subject to failure because of the motivations, because of the interest, because of your learnings, because of your own personality thing. So, what you can do, first you should perceive, then you should believe, assume, then you should explore the right wrongs in the light of the facts, and then you should believe. What is the meaning of the second line? As your patient told you a story, as your patient told you the symptoms, if you're suspecting him, then don't believe him. Listen to everyone, make assumptions, then clarify those assumptions based upon the facts. What are the facts? That is the same assumption is true in every situation or not. If that fact is true, then make a belief about it. Got it? Don't straightforwardly jump towards the perception, and don't believe on your perceptual things. So any questions so far? As it was a difficult topic, and as per my beliefs, after learning, this is the most confusing thing, especially this size constancy and this shape constancy and etc. But you must clarify it. We will put videos on the Moodle. Just go and check today. So if there are any questions, then please write it down. We have 2 minutes left. You guys have no questions, or there is something that you didn't understand anything? Please, please make me clear about it. Okay, if you're saying all clear, that I admit it, but there is doubt. Okay, then smile and thank you. It is there. It is written in your book. It is written in the first paragraph, in which actually in book it's very confusing, right? In book it is written in the first paragraph, in which they are saying that the stimulus came, and your neurons will get the action potential, etc., etc. Same Ramzan Mubarak to you. Okay, it is there. Everything is there, but is written in very confused form. Okay, hopefully now it's good. Okay, thank you.